Charles Mwangu Shampagi, and tonight we'll be discussing police crackdown against the opposition, the new phase, and this discussion will largely center on comparisons between how the police under the previous leadership, or under the leadership of the former IGP, Kale Kayihura, handled the opposition and how especially political activities being handled under IGP Martins Okoth Ochola. I need to start with state this and apologize. We do not have representation from the Uganda Police Force, but if you're able to share with us comments on this, please share them because I've just been on the phone with Fred Enanga, the spokesperson for the police, and he says most of the officers were engaged and they were not able to dispatch somebody to come and be on the show, especially given the time when they were informed, which has been since yesterday. Some issue on our side, the planning, but also the police wasn't able to find somebody to come in and sit in the show. I have with me in the studio, I have the Honorable Joshua Anywarach, Member of Parliament for Padiere County. He is an independent in Parliament. Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much, and this is my maiden appearance. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Barbara Mong. She's a journalist. She's been training journalists. She's worked with the New Vision, the Daily Monitor, the East African, and Uganda Radio Network. That's quite a bit of a journey. Barbara, very nice to have you once again.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
You don't need a lot of introduction on this show because you've been here a few times. Coming back to studios, Joseph Kabuleta previously worked with the New Vision. Joseph, very nice to have you.
It's my pleasure.
And you've been here a few times recently, so yes. You don't need a lot of introduction as well. We've seen, I want to start with the Member of Parliament. There is talk about amendment of the Public Order Management Act of 2009. Apparently now, both shades of the political divide think there are issues that need to be fixed in that law. But we've also seen a round of enforcement of prevention of political actors from engaging in certain activities without clearance under the Public Order Management Act. And a case in point is the leader of the former presidential candidate of the Forum for Democratic Change, Dr. Kiza Besigye. He was plucked out of a studio in Jinja. He was almost plucked out of a studio in Mwende, which is a new level of policing that we hadn't seen before, because previously police never went into radio or TV studios to pluck out someone that they felt uncomfortable with. That was a job that was left to RDCs. RDC Eric Sakwa in Jinja played a prominent role in trying to get Besigye out of that studio, of course, with the support of the police. From your perspective as a Member of Parliament, are these things that you're questioning, are these things that you're asking answers for from the Uganda Police Force? Are they providing any answers in this direction?
I think as in, so far as I think damage control is concerned, it would be good to talk about amendment of the law. The Public Order Management Act can be amended as in million times as possible. The issue is not the law. The issue is unfair playground, unfair advantage over political opponents. I think that's what is in play. So that therefore means the center of control and command does not become the law, becomes the political player who is interested in muzzling others out of political space. So the amendment, as may be suggested, may even not address the issue. Remember, we were opposed to this law. I was in Parliament when we were amending that law. I mean, when they're introducing, making that law. And the need to amend that, to make the law came from the desire to, you know, the court had outlawed the Police Act, especially Section 32(2).
Yes.
That was giving express powers to police to regulate, actually to either permit or not permit public meetings. Now, in the Mwanga Chivumbi versus Attorney case, the court was clear, said police does not have the power to permit any gathering, but rather they can regulate. Therefore, in so assuming that they would actually regulate, I mean, permit or deny permission to gather, they were going against the constitutional provision in the Bill of Rights of freedom of assembly and so on. And that's a clear argument. So in making this law, we told the former Prime Minister then, Patrick, the Right Honorable Patrick Amambabas, we said, actually in trying to introduce a law that you want us, a bill that you want us to enact and become an act of parliament, that is seemingly in contradiction with the court order. You're actually disrespecting the court. You're disrespecting the judiciary. And besides, you're trying to make it, you're trying to reintroduce what court otherwise outlawed, that police can deny permission and so on. It was a bitter argument. They said, no, this is a different thing, and we went into now specifics. We said, okay, if there is a political institution, a political body, political movements, which are recognized, and in their due course of, you know, exercising probably, or enjoying the activities and so on, there's no need, absolutely, to even inform police or ask them to provide this number of days and so on. We simply said that is in their course, in their line of political activity. But then it turned out in the implementation that these guys were actually exactly doing what was our fear. Police would outrightly deny, you know, gatherings, and they would give reasons that, you know, we don't have enough reinforcement. For example, in the Bobby case recently, there was no reinforcement to ensure security for Bobby's function.
I've seen it.
But then they deployed over 200 police to make sure the function does not take place. So you like, so there's no reinforcement to provide security, but you have reinforcement of over 200 people now to disperse about how many people had gathered. So for me, if IPOD, for example, or the Prime Minister is telling this country that they're going to rethink that law, I would say it's really damage control. It's trying to excite the public and trying to excite the opposition, because the Prime Minister is so powerless in this political game. Actually is a beneficiary of a bigger person, who then, if it's not in his will that he should, there should be fair ground or fair play in the political arena, then there's nothing he can do. So I think that false hope, for me, Ugandans should not even waste time on it.
Just before I leave you, the bigger question is, we've seen police reach out, and I hadn't mentioned the Bobby Wine Busabala issue, and that huge contradiction. Joseph, let me jump to you. I'll come back to you, Honorable, in a moment. That huge contradiction, I saw Joachim Buembo tweet about it and say, you said you didn't have enough resources, personnel and otherwise, to ensure that this function would take place peacefully without disruption. But when you deploy in these large numbers. But we have seen this before, and people have been saying, when there was a lot of celebration when Kale Kaihura was taken out of leadership of the police, and Martin Zokotho Chola was brought in, and there was an expectation, the initial statements that he made, but when it comes to dealing with the political position at the moment, is there a difference? Do you see a difference?
No,
has the police changed?
No, there is none whatsoever, and it's out of the IGP's hands, really, because he also has orders to follow, as did Kaihura, and as the Honorable said, it's all about blocking political space. And also, for the case of Bobby Wine, you know, you have to understand that politics is a function of money. So if Bobby Wine is going to organize a successful campaign, he's got to have money coming from some source outside of his salary as an MP, because that's too meager for anybody to go and do a national campaign. Even those who are doing constituency campaigns find it meager. Now, how much more across the country? So he says they have blocked 124 of his concerts. Now, imagine how much income that is denying him, and how much that kind of ties his hands as far as going and expressing himself politically is concerned, because you need money for that. And that has always been the Museveni game, to make sure that resources belong in one place. We were here last time, I think the previous last time I was here when, after the Chankwanzi thing, and MPs were telling Museveni that those who have behaved themselves, let them be spared from the vagaries of an NRM primary.
That they be ring-fenced.
So they can go straight and become straight NRM MPs and not go through the primary. Why? Because if they avoid the primary, then that means, because of course the government has to have an excess number of members of parliament, then that means the responsibility of making them MPs falls on government, because government has to have the majority. So they avoid.
Falls on the NRM.
Falls on the NRM, yes, on the party. So so what we are seeing here, and you saw so Amama Mbabazi. To be honest, I saw his campaign start, and when they closed National Bank of Commerce, you remember that. And so there is no way for him to bring money into the country for a campaign. Then I was at a television station. They told me that they sent him an invoice of 1.8 million Uganda shillings, and he couldn't pay it. So all the coverage for him stopped in all media houses, because they realized he had no money, and without money there is no campaign. So that's the thing. So if you can block every individual from having a war chest, and then the only war chest belongs in one place, because for them they can come and say we are building a hospital and MPs endorse, and you also don't have, I mean, of course they're not going to spend $400 billion dollars building a hospital, I can guarantee you that. But then you also MPs, for them to be reduced to that of signing off things like that, where you're paying an investor to be able to, they have also been pushed in that place, because it's not easy. I was talking to a member of parliament, he told me it cost him 500 million to get that seat. The first 3 years he's paying it back with interest. The next 3 years he's trying to come back. So
the next 2 years, actually.
The next 2 years rather. So his hands are tied throughout. Now, when he goes to Chankwanzi, you remember our colleague here was telling us, they are saying different things outside, you know, in the evening of hot tea and what, as they are, from what they are saying publicly, because and it's the Museveni game. Just handle the money, make sure everybody who is going out there is going to be broke, and now the police have to do what they do. Now the explanations, now it's almost comical, the explanations they give, but you can't expect anything different, because they give you an order, you have to implement it. Now they leave it up to you to explain. And some things are inexplicable. So you have to come up with comical things. Now we don't have personnel, now we have personnel. Now apparently somebody was supposed to assassinate Bobby Wine, so wanted to save him from himself, and so on. And there will be so many others from different circles, and and we can't expect anything different. But we know they are obeying orders, and we know that the IGP, regardless of who it is, as long as there is this government, which has done everything in its power over these years to make sure there is one center of power, is going to be the one issuing orders. Whoever is in that position is going to be doing the same thing. So the police spokesperson has a very difficult job, because he's the one who is supposed to explain things which cannot be explained logically, and the IGP has to do what he has to do.
Barbara, is that the way the police is supposed to work? Because you and I have been in the field covering these political activities for a long period of time. At some stage, you expect that the police is going to draw the line and say, here we are going beyond our mandate. We'll hand this over to someone else. We'll let someone else take charge of this particular section of the public demonstration. Because the police, unlike the military, for a long time tended, because they are civil police, tended to read the law for what it is. Resources are spent on taking the police through human rights, through the law, through some of these things, so they know they will read you a section of the law. And for a long time, I used to joke about the selective reading of Article 43 of the Constitution, because they would read Article 43 of the Constitution, Sabbatical 1, conveniently avoid Sabbatical 2, especially C of the Constitution, because on the limitation of rights, and particularly these rights. But there was that excitement, including in the media and in the political circles, that Kale Kaihura, who was seen as the hatchet man for Yoweri Museveni, who was prepared to do everything and anything to reign in the opposition, had been exited, and Martin Zokotho Chola, one who is a career police officer, had taken over from the position of deputy, had taken over. But is deputized by soldier? Yes, deputized by Sabit Muzei from the military. But there was a thinking that he's going to bring the police back to where it was supposed to be after 2 consecutive leaderships of former military officers. That doesn't seem to have come out.
No, Charles. And you see, the Public Order Management Act that we're discussing today. It's not that, you know, when you sit down and you read that law, and you know, you just read it independently of the spirit behind it, it reads right. It reads that the police is supposed to maintain law and order, and the police is supposed to act as per the constitution, not outside the constitution. The police is supposed to maintain peace during that, during the public meetings. The police is supposed to prevent the opposing group from disrupting this meeting. The police is supposed to maintain traffic laws and all that. It reads beautifully, you know, when you read it. But we need to look at the spirit behind this law. When Honorable Mambabazi introduced this law and championed it to a point that it was passed, I was as a reporter at that time covering Parliament. You should have seen the way they fought for this. And the spirit behind it is just to curtail the operations, the actions of the opposition politician. So even if the current opposition leaders come and say, let's amend this, the spirit stays. It's still the same people in power. It's the spirit behind it that matters. And then that also applies to police. When you have Okoth right now, who is heading the police, not Kale Kaihura, is still working with people who had the same mindset and who gave General Kale Kaihura the orders to actually implement this law. So not much has changed. The spirit remains the same. Everything remains the same. And then also, we need to know that
at operational level, can a leader of an institution make changes? Can they influence how an institution functions? How do you see that? When does somebody have, because with all due respect to the IGP, he's had his opportunity for the honeymoon. But now as the election draws closer, you see this. You've seen they blocked DP reunions in Busoga, in Jinja recently. They blocked Robert Chagulanyi and his people power. They blocked Kiza Besigye and actually tried to pluck him out of studio, because I think that's a different level. By the time you go to walk into studio and say, I want to get this person out. For the years I hosted the hot seat on KFM, if we had a controversial guest in studio, and most of the time it was, most of the time it was actually, sometimes we'd have Dr. Kiza Besigye. You'd look through the window, or up on the third floor, and you can see police deployed below. Yes, and then you go back on air and plead and say, this is my guest. I'm hoping if the police is listening, which normally they would be doing, and I know they're doing now, they're watching the show, it'd say, don't arrest this person when they're coming out of my studio, because that will make it difficult for me to get other guests to come into studio if they know that there's a risk they will be picked up and arrested. And for most of the time, they would get out of the studio and they would get to their homes and get arrested subsequently. But when the police moves to invade that space of the media to get someone out of a studio, like we're doing here, it's at a different level.
No, but Charles, you are assuming that the current IGP was not in police at the time, but he was in police. He was General Kale Kaihura's deputy. So I'm sure he knew what was happening then, and he knows what's happening right now. It's not that he's just joined police. It's not that he's just gotten into the leadership position. No, he's been there. He's been making decisions. He's been around. What we need to know, for me, what I think right now is that what's happening within the ruling party is that the politics of patronage is so inefficient right now. It's not working. So we have the inefficient patronage politics. We have the declining economy. We have the bad governance, and we have insecurity that's happening right now. And because the most affected people right now are the youth. Okay. And so the youth want to claim their space. The youth are more politically aware right now. They are active, they're participating in politics right now. And so when that is growing and that dissatisfaction is being demonstrated, you need to find a way of controlling it. So the police that has been largely militarized right now is at the center of this. They need to play the role of controlling the dissatisfied population right now. So there is no way they're going to run away from it.
I can see Joseph to come and then I'll come back to you.
Let me ask you, let me answer your question rather, which you asked. of how much power really does the new IGP have to control things at police within, I mean, what he can be given. And the question is quite a bit, but outside of politics. Because outside of politics, we still have journalists being assaulted for doing their work. That is within the realm of what he can cover without crossing his bosses. We still have people being picked up in the night for being idle and disorderly. People who are walking home from hotels, from, you know, places where they have been working. I recently went to have a cup of coffee with somebody, and he was telling me how he just survived being picked up for being idle and disorderly. He had been working, he's a chef at a place, and he had been walking home because he didn't have transport. Now that's the reality of so many people in the city. Now they come and arrest you, you need a lot more money to come out than the salary you get working in there. So those are things he can change. He can show the police to be a bit more humane than it is. Now the politics will give it to him that maybe that's outside of his, you know, of what he can honestly handle. But he hasn't even done these other ones. If he was a career policeman, as he should be, as he is rather, and if he really wanted to change the image of police, there are so many other things that he could handle that are not going to cross his bosses and that somehow give the police, okay, here let's be good, but here you understand there are superior forces that are pushing us in a different direction. So my answer is he hasn't actually done much.
But Charles, sorry, because he came in. But you know, picking up from what Joseph has said, you realize that at the moment, police is increasingly operating outside the formal police structure. There is so much informal decisions being made by, you know, you have so many little groups. You have the Border 2010, which is somehow now quiet. You had the Chiboko Squad. You had so there's a lot of decision that is being made.
Haven't those groups been disbanded?
No.
Now
Charles, not all of them. Not all of them. Some, two out of the so many. Okay, the crime preventers that they say is joining the UPDF. Okay, and then you have the Border 2010. Right now, the leaders are battling it in court.
Yes.
So that's two out of the so many.
Dysfunctional.
Yes. But there are so many informal networks that
you have the flying squad that's no longer there.
The official police chain. So you cannot have. I was going to say General Martin, of course. I mean the IGP. It doesn't have control over this network.
You play an oversight role, and you look into this. But people watching Parliament function these days, they think you're distracted by so many other things that you're not paying attention to the basic, actually your primary job, because you're political actors. And you're not holding these institutions because these are playing in the political space, first and foremost.
Well, first of all, which institution? In good governance requires that institutions must make decisions, and those decisions must have effect. Tell me which institutions in Uganda.
No account for your own institution.
That's what that's what I'm asking you.
Yes.
So you see, government works in such a way that you have executive power vested, okay, in the executive wing of the country, and of course most of the processes start with them. Whether it is budget process, you will start with them. They come and propose in the House. Whether it is the laws, but finally, when you're talking about implementing law enforcement, the whole enforcement body is under the executive. Now, if you have a situation, for example, where the IGP is someone to go to court, and then there is a whole deployment of people who are looking like they're not in uniform. I mean, they're not in uniform, they look like ordinary people, when you know actually these are crime preventers, police officers, including UN soldiers and so on, coming to actually demonstrate at court and holding the whole court premises at ransom. And these are the people who are supposed to enforce court orders. What are you going to talk about?
Isn't that the stage where Parliament steps in and discards the political divisions that exist in that house and says, for the image of this country, for the institution of Parliament, and for purposes of checks and balances, we need to...
We are speaking the same language. That's the ideal. That's the ideal. In developed democracies, that's what happens. Actually, you can even summon a president. I mean, they're investigating Trump, the president of the superpower in this world, was being investigated for connections with Russia. And it would be someone, I mean, the investigators are just as simple people as police, you know, simple people. But now here, you can't even start a case against the president. Now the problem is, my sister and my brother, they have really brought it very clearly. You have professionalized the army, then you take all the messes of the army and put it as a baggage on the police. So you professionalize the army, but you militarize the police. So much so that, let me tell you the militarization of police. One, there will be impunity. Number two, every time the military or some section of the military is supposed to do anything weird, they will dress up in the police uniform.
Yes, that's true.
Now you cannot tell. I've always said many times, if you know a game warden becomes a poacher, who will you tell is killing the animals? It will be very hard. Now two, listen attentively. Even the name, that Uganda Police Force, that name has issues. When you go to the Bible, when they call Peter and say, now we're giving the name Petro. On this name, on this, you are now a rock, on this rock we shall build what? A big church. Abraham, the name was changed. There is something in the name. When you say, this is Uganda Police Force, they think now, yes, I have to do everything by force. They even forget what they're supposed to do.
Let's take a quick commercial break. Hold your thought. Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion around the police enforcement, especially against largely opposition political groups, mobilization, and especially that escalation to plucking guests out of studios of media houses midway through their presentation, and the response that the police has given so far. We'll be right back. If you're watching us, IGP Martin Zokotho Chola, you could call us and share your what your audit, your own score of your term in office so far is since you took office, and especially your enforcement mechanism and the concerns that Ugandans are beginning to raise that the police is going beyond what it used to do before in dealing with the political opposition, because people have drawn comparisons. President Museveni and the NRM are actively mobilizing and sending a message about where they want to go next, which is the next election. The opposition political actors are also out there in the field trying to prepare themselves. But who do you allow, who don't you allow, and how do you play with the law that you have to make sure that there's a semblance of fairness to everybody? You may not achieve 100% fairness to everybody, but how do you achieve that? Joshua Anyorach is a member of parliament for Badiere County. He's an independent member of parliament, and he insists that he is independent. He doesn't lean to any of the groups in the House, neither opposition nor the NRM. You're explaining something, but haven't you shirked your own responsibility as parliament to make sure that, in a way, especially you who is independent and your colleagues, that you can get the institutions that work under, whether they work under the executive, they have some accountability, responsibility to you, that you're holding them to account to some level?
Well, that's not in question.
You were in parliament when parliament was invaded. You sought an answer. When the Supreme Court was making its ruling the other day, that issue was still coming up, and you saw the way they responded to it. And people will be asking and saying, where do you turn next? What is the next level that the country might fall to if the Supreme Court thinks an invasion of parliament by security forces is okay because it was brought upon them by the behavior of the members of parliament? When you tell us here that you see there are layers of there are layers of command and control. In effect, I'm just trying to transcribe to say your words in a different way. That there are layers of command and control, that these responsibilities are vested in the executive, and as parliament you're completely powerless.
I think you misquoted me out of context. I said where the executive does not have the will to allow institution, actually the chief executive to be exact, does not have the will to have institutions work, then you're going to have impunity everywhere. you're going to have institutions gagged to do. For example, you go to internal affairs. People were illegally evicted from offices because they disagreed with the project of, passport. And as Parliament, we made pronouncements over pronouncements. When Bobby was blocked the first time in performing his function, we made resolutions. We said that must stop. Now, in a country, civilized country, that resolution of Parliament would be respected, whether it is binding on the executive or not. It would be respected.
So when you walk back into the plenary on Tuesday, and you pass that resolution upon resolution, as you say, and you have what happened just this last week.
So that's what I'm saying. Once you have institutions not working and it's in the goodwill of, let me give you some better thing here. We have, when you have senior citizens die in some countries, it is written down procedure, policy, laws, and so on, how they are, for example, buried. The late former president of this country, Apollo Milton Obote, was taken by road to his country. There are so many people who will adjust command of the big man, fly this body of so-and-so, irrespective of whether the person is senior or not, to his village. It will happen. Now, everything now there's only one center of control. Even police, if you are seen to ruthlessly, put up an assembly, fight and so on, just a call away, give promotion to that guy. So you do everything to please the power that be, the whims of power that be.
The example you use of the burial of former President Apollo Milton Obote, I was in active journalism and I covered that story and the return of his body here. That was a decision of the Uganda People's Congress to give his supporters an opportunity to bid him farewell, and the route was decided by the Uganda People's Congress and his family to make stopovers in Jinja, in Mbale, yes.
For example, if you come to my home and we're eating, if I invite you and say, please, you're welcome to come to the table, and it's your option to say, well, I'm okay, I'm not going to eat. Just like you gave me some chicken lollipop when we arrived here, and I decided to eat it. If it was an option when government had offered and said, we're going to do state burial, take the body, this is our arrangement and so on, and then you have your own arrangement that you're juxtaposing with the one of government, that would make sense. But government did not come out clearly to say this is what we're going to do and so on. And yet in some other areas, they would say, we are picking so and dropping here by plane or by helicopter. But what I'm trying to say is that there's one center of command and control, and that must work everywhere. Therefore, police and Parliament, we are almost the same, hand-tied. Now, for police, by the way, make no mistake. Make no mistake. Don't think that all police officers are into this game. One-on-one, when you speak to them, they are tired, they are annoyed, but, they work under command. A command, you have to take command, and that is all. But one-on-one, guys are not happy. They're not. Even they will tell you that the real police stopped with the Katumba Wamala. Any other recruitments of receive and train are actually military deployments, but starting initially with the police seemingly police training. But these guys will come out and they have another center of order that they pick, they take. They don't follow these other structures. Administratively, Uchola has tried. That's why you see him, he closed Nalofanya, he tried to fix some other people who are more qualified in particular positions and so on, trying to administratively act like a professional police officer. But when it comes to things to do with the orders about politics, because police is also politicized, he is powerless. There will be another person who will say, please, by the way, this is what we want you to do. Yes. And you must do it. If you don't do it, then please keep away, because this may be dangerous for you. Okay. Now, therefore, my point here is never militarize the police. And once you militarize the police and they're powerless, they cannot. Well, the other day in Arua, a policeman who purportedly was reckless, allowing, a suspect called Honorable Zake to abscond, to disappear from cells. said, no, I didn't see the person they said I was guarding. No, I didn't see him. But you are being forced to. When we were in Arua, the police officers were being forced to make statement that when they went to search where Bobby Wine was sleeping, that they got a gun. And they refused. They said, we're not signing because we didn't get anything. Now, and one-on-one, when you speak to them, they will be so bitter and say, I'd rather leave police than put somebody's life at risk. So one-on-one, these guys are not as you think. But because of institutional order, they follow. And where is the order coming from? That's what should interest us. I would think, honest advice to all the political players here. Politics is good. And sometimes it looks like that's the only option. But you know, we must leave it one day. We must leave it. But how do we leave it? Do we leave it completely spoiled? Do we leave it with no legacy? Because it has become criminal for you and me and all these people to speak politics. Once you sing him in a song that sounds political. No, that song is political. But what is wrong with political things? Life is politics. Now, if you think this song is highly political, compose another song that should neutralize it. If you think that this person is going to the radio and is going to cause agitations, is going to, there's a word they normally use, that incite violence, then go and exactly do the opposite. But when you tell the country that by 2021 there will be no opposition, that is also incitement of the people against opposition.
You're quoting a statement by President Yoweri Museveni when he
was so it's good enough for one player to incite others, but it's extremely bad for another player to tell others, because public office is a public thing. We need to assess you, and we tell you that this far you have done well, this far. It is not a church. Even in church, there's politics. Okay.
Let me take a message from Nteja Simwe. He says, yes, it is that paranoia that has kept NRM in power for 33 years and still counting. Police will block anybody who threatens the big man's chair, and anybody who thinks the problem is the law should find me at City Square for a glass of wine. The problem is politics, not the law. Well, I don't know where they sell wine or distribute wine or they brew wine at the Constitution Square or the City Square, Mr. Nteja Simwe. Gift in Nansana, Manzuru Leslie William is in West Nile. He says, excessive and matched greed is the oxygen of every abusive, manipulative, destructive, narcissistic center of our politics in Uganda. Power players of Uganda today think they are gods. Injustice, corruption, and impunity are the cornerstones of our institutions. That's a Manzuru Leslie William. Gift of Nansana says, once hailed as a freedom fighter and liberator, Mr. Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, has deliberately decided to bend on silencing and suppressing the opposition to maintain a firm grip on his power. Selfish interest and the lack of tolerance for divergent views, especially from the opposition and civil rights groups, have continued to show Ugandans the true colors of Mr. Museveni. When in Kampala, Dr. KB is allowed on radio and TV stations, but this is not the same case when it happens when he goes to upcountry FM radio stations, and one wonders why. Where is the Uganda Communications Commission in all this impunity of forcing Dr. Kiza Besigye out of radio stations? General Kale Kaihura or IGP Okoth? General Kale was better, in quotes. People were never pulled out of studios. All in all, despite being held in high regard, Mr. Museveni will go down in the books of history as a freedom fighter who betrayed his people and a leader who knew what needed to be done but still chose to look the other way. Yes, Joseph.
I can answer one of these questions. Why upcountry and why not here? First of all, it's important to know that the terror has been decentralized. So when Kiza Besigye is pulled out of a studio in Mubende or in, there have been other instances. There was one in Gulu where power was switched off in the whole town. And it was believed the RDC had given the order. And when the media went and asked the RDC, he said, no, I was actually at home enjoying the interview and only to be interrupted. Yet he's the one who had given the order for them to make sure that the interview doesn't go on. Now, does he get those orders directly from the president? No, but then he knows what he has to do to be in the good books. So it is a decentralized system. All in Kamwenge, for Porto rather, you had one where they went and poured salt in a radio machine because they had a program which was apparently waking people up to, their civil liberties and things like that. and they warned them several times to stop it, and they didn't, and eventually the radio, I think, lost some of its equipment as a result. Now, why up country?
The former owner of that radio station has since sold it.
Yeah, has since sold. Yeah, you know that from that place. Now, why up country and why not here? Because if there is any base that Museveni still thinks he has, and I think it's even a delusion, it is the peasantry. And so if you come in Kampala and even on NTV, regardless of its wide reach, how many people have TVs in this country? So he can tolerate that and say, okay, you be on TV because the peasants I'm looking at to vote for me, on whom I'm going to build to cheat the rest of the election, don't have TVs. Now radio, they have radio, and they have country. Now if you're, the politics has even been played in UCC, where they make sure that when giving out frequencies, there is a clear, jurisdiction of where you're supposed to belong. And even radio stations that want to buy into up-country radio stations have to use a lot of tact to make sure that they get it. For instance, if I wanted to buy, if I was a radio station owner in Uganda and I wanted to buy a radio station in Arua.
You're a radio station owner in Kampala and want to buy one in Arua.
What they will do is, if let's say it's owned by the honorable here, his company, I will buy shares into his company, but what I'm interested in is his radio. Because now when you're selling me shares in your company, UCC has no. But part of your assets are that radio station, which I'm actually interested in. So I'll say it's owned by this company, so I'll buy shares into that company, and eventually, so to avoid UCC laws, because they're also trying to make sure that this whole radio station now, the reason he does that is because he believes he's best.
Joseph, you have a small country that has over 290 radio stations on air today. Management of spectrum becomes important then, doesn't it?
It does, it does, but then it is it's gerrymandering really, because what happens is as long as these ones are within Kampala, he knows within Kampala and even some urban regions, they don't care because Museveni is unpopular and he knows he's not going to be popular there anyway. Now, it's the people up country who have been actually the worst hit by his regime, the peasantry, who actually, ironically, still support him a bit. And that's where I believe his base is. Now, he does not want people to touch his base. That's why if Besigye goes anywhere up country, that's a problem. If he's in Kampala, if he's in any radio station in Kampala, even on TV, because not too many people, the reach of television is not too big, they will let him be. So it's all about stopping people from hearing alternative political views. And they will only hear one political view. And the truth is there are people out there deep in the villages who have it took Besigye 15 years to even be known by certain people in villages where I come from that he exists. That's before even they start thinking of voting for him. They only knew Museveni, and he makes sure it's that way. Now Besigye the first time, then the second time, then the third time, people start saying okay, and then he gets perhaps a 25%. But then the fourth time, he was actually beating, in those places. And how? Because they finally got to hear an alternative voice. Now that's what they try to avoid, the alternative voice. And they will fight it up country with everything he has. Come to Kampala, say whatever you have to say, no problem. Go up country, that's when you see the police brutality. And it doesn't even have to come from the president. It will come from the RDC in that place, who make sure that the police come. If they have to pluck you out of studio, they will do it. If they have to switch off power in the whole town, they will do it. If they have to pour salt in your machines, they will do it.
Thank you. Barbara, before I come to you, I did tease out a question on Twitter earlier to ask people what they would be interested in listening on the show. And I got quite a number of interesting suggestions. So I want to appreciate everybody who sent out a suggestion. Someone wanted us, I think Kenneth Barunji wanted us to discuss the sugar industry. There's been a change in the policy on the sugar industry, the zoning, to allow the players not to poach on each other's cane. Which is now still before Parliament. You're about to deal with it. Some people wanted us to discuss Uganda Airlines, but I think we have discussed Uganda Airlines and we'll continue discussing Uganda Airlines until it gets into the air and even after it gets into the air. So it's to just confirm that I did receive your views and we'll put them under consideration for subsequent shows, and we'll continue reaching out to you to share with us what you think. And then other people were suggesting also on the composition of the panel. How many journalists versus, because this is the fourth estate, versus invited guests. All those views did come in. I just have a message from Patrick Rubongoya. He says, why isn't NRM government represented on the show to give a balanced show? Barbara, do you want to answer that question?
He says you're in yellow.
I think it's for the host or the producer actually to answer that question, why NRM is not on the show. But the fourth estate, basically, I imagine it's about the people in the media, the journalists, analyzing issues that happened within the week, really. I don't think it's for any political party or for someone leaning to side.
And besides, away from that, I'm also a journalist, you know. I was working on Pai the FM, so
yeah. So all three are journalists. Yeah, there's no one.
Patrick, I have no apologies for that. We do not seek. It's not the typical political talk show that has to represent the different shades of opinion. It's how the people who practice and write these stories look at what the topic in issue is, and we will occasionally invite an outsider, a guest, to give a bit of perspective on what we're discussing. So ideally we should be having only journalists discussing this, but we'll bring in a guest always to balance, to give us some different perspective that we don't have. The Honorable Member of Parliament here gives us a perspective from Parliament. They're looking at the law. So for that reason. Emmanuel Oluka, you tried to send us a message, but that message didn't deliver. I'll just ask one question to Barbara before we take a break. Barbara, how is the media covering this whole political, the political game as it is now, and police enforcement? The Daily Monitor ran a two-page spread on the policing, which is close to the topic that we're discussing, under Kaihura and under IG Martins Okoth-Ochola, of dealing with the opposition. Have we, as the media, done our bit to hold the institution of the police, to hold the leadership of the police, and to hold the political actors to account? Because Kabuleta talked about something. Prevent Bobby Wine, for example, from generating money through his concerts. And from the time Bobby Wine came onto the scene, the question was, where do you draw the line between Bobby Wine, the entertainer, and Robert Senta Muchagula, in the Member of Parliament, the politician?
Let's just separate the media in Kampala and the media outside Kampala. The media basically up country. When you listen to radio stations, when you read the newspapers, and when you watch the TV talk shows, in Kampala it's fairly actually vibrant. You have talk shows where you have both sides. You have the opposition, you have the government, and these people actually say almost everything that they would love to say. Now, when you look at the media outside Kampala, up country, I think that's where we need to pay attention, because just like they are clamping on opposition leaders outside Kampala, they are very strict. They are restricting the freedom of the journalist outside Kampala. For a journalist within a radio station to actually report fairly accurate, balanced story, it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult because, one, before you get out of the newsroom, you know who owns this radio station. We know that almost 80% of radio stations in this country are owned by politicians, and the majority are politicians who are leaning to the ruling NRM party. Already you have that before you get out of the newsroom. That's at the back of your mind. You're thinking about your boss and what he's going to say. There are really rules within. Now, when you get out of that, out of the newsroom, you have the RDC, who always, tells you that, you know what, I'm the representative of the president. I'm the voice of the president here. They are actually the law in these districts when you go there. So you have lots of intimidation, you have lots of threats, and you have even at times physical violence meted on these journalists outside Kampala. So outside Kampala, it's very restrictive. Outside Kampala, it's extremely difficult for journalists to operate and bring balanced stories. And so the reason why, and I think it's because of the characters of these radio stations. When you look at the radio stations outside Kampala, they're very well defined. They either serve a tribe, they speak in that language, they're aware of the sensitivities, they're aware of the taboos, they communicate to these people effectively. They speak their language, they know their culture. So they're very, very scared of such journalists because they communicate the message effectively. Okay. And the reason why also these politicians are using those radio stations outside Kampala, it's because they know they're going to get to the target audience, they're going to speak to the voters. Okay. And actually, the people up country vote.
Thank
They're
you.
the majority who votes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Luka, your message was delivered. It says police impunity will get worse towards 2021 elections. It's sad that the current police only plays politics and not the law and order they are supposed to. Change of leaders at presidential level are pivotal for sanity of constitutionalism and rule of law. Our constitution today gives a person of the president a lot more power over every institution. Even Bobby Wine in the current constitution may say he became president, would probably do the same as Museveni has done. Emmanuel, I want to disagree with you a little. I don't know what my colleagues think, but a constitution that hasn't been tested under different hands, the interpretation will be that everyone else will treat it the same way. But until you get the constitution to be tried out and handled by someone else, you would never know that actually it's a good constitution, because you do not know. It's one person's enforcement mechanism or usage or deployment of the constitution and its provisions that we are looking at. This same constitution with different people, they would create and show you where the dividing lines are, where certain powers stop and where certain other powers begin. That's my personal opinion.
To add to your personal opinion, I think
yes.
if you had said that as we get closer to 2021, we'll see more amendments of the constitution, especially to change the rule of the game, I would be so excited. A constitution that's amended every 5 years. And of course, next election like period, you have an amendment and something is coming, especially to favor someone else.
Mr. Emmanuel, look at the thing is, if the constitution was that favorable to one individual, it wouldn't suffer that many amendments, because that shows you that the constitution would have its own limitations. I'm afraid, Joseph, we need to take a commercial break. I'll just take another message from Nteja Simo, who says, Honorable MP, do you realize how powerless your parliament has become? I listened to another program this afternoon. One MP said that parliament has been Musevenized, judiciary has been Musevenized. Whatever President Museveni wants is done. Whatever he doesn't want can't be done. Toothless Ugandans. Nteja Asimwe. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with this discussion. We'll be right back. Still watching the Fourth Estate, and welcome to this last segment of the show. We are discussing police and how it's been blocking opposition activities. And someone is asking whether this is a question of paranoia on the part of the NRM. Do you think NRM is paranoid? Because Joseph,
no, they are not paranoid. They are not paranoid. They are very unpopular, and the only way they are going to stay in power is by doing the things they are doing. Because the truth is, if there was anything even remotely close to a level playing field, there is no way Museveni can win an election in this country. Not even in 2016, he couldn't. Now he's becoming more unpopular as every passing day. So 2021, he definitely cannot in anything close, not even a free and fair election. That is perhaps too idealistic, as the Honorable said. Anything close, remotely close to it. So what they are doing is what they have to do, and it's going to continue. If it's there on the ballot paper, it's going to continue all the way through, the Electoral Commission and the computers and all that to make sure that it comes out on top, and then quell people's anger. The same thing as what happened in 2016. Because
I think they're actually paranoid,
no,
Joseph. I think they are.
No, paranoia. Paranoid is when you're scared, okay, at least the way I understand, of something that is not there, that is in existence. So maybe you're scared something is going to be this way when it isn't. But now
exactly,
when you're scared of something
issue.
that is real, that is absolutely real, that's not paranoia. That is that's fear. That is trying to hold somebody. I'll give you an example.
Paranoid and fear are actually the same. They're not actually very different.
Let me give you an example. If, let's say, I had a beautiful woman as my wife, who I'm sure does not like me, and I have to lock her in the gate to make sure she does not go out somewhere, and I'm sure she doesn't like me, that's not paranoia. That is doing what I have to do to keep control of this. Now, paranoia is when she actually likes me, but I'm scared of everybody, and those people do not present a threat. But now what Museveni is doing is everything presents a real threat. So there is no paranoia. It is just that he's trying to hold down a woman who does not like him. Okay,
No,
figuratively
I
speaking.
think they are actually,
Okay.
and they are paranoid
I just wanted,
because
yes.
because of the composition of the next voting population. If you look at the registered voters, we're going to have more than 70% of people less than 35. And the people less than 35, they are failing to communicate to these people. They are failing to actually help these people. You know, the patronage resources has now been stretched. There is no money.
I'm hoping that we shall have a
And
full discussion on the demographic question. But I've been looking through history, particularly of this country. And I'm looking for that point when the adult population, the elderly population, held sway in determining the political direction of this country. And I haven't found. At independence, Obote was 29, or in his early 30s. When Museveni came to power, he was 43 or 45?
About 41, I think.
About 41. The rest of the group that he had were in their early 20s. When Besigye, and that's around the same time Besigye came onto the stage.
yes.
When Besigye decided to contest for presidency in 2001, he was in his 40s. So what is this demographic that has changed to significantly impact
It has not
the
changed,
political
Charles.
dynamic in this country? Young people have always been at the center. And these young people, how they have played their politics at a particular stage, I think is what we have missed out by looking at this, what people have called the population dividend. Yes.
Actually, it has not changed.
Yes.
And because all these people came to power young, now they're seeing themselves going. They're seeing the young people coming to claim their position. And for me, that is what's scaring the NRM the most. Because if you look at all the youth projects they've come with, they have developed, they are just basically handouts. They are not serious projects. They are not serious investment projects right now that communicates to the youth. And the few that we have, it's been swallowed up by patronage personalities, people who want to eat, corruption. They grab all this. So there is absolutely nothing for the young
Thank
people.
you.
So the young people are now coming out and they're saying, we want our space. We want to take this. And that's what makes even Bobby Wine more scary to the NRM than Besigye. Because Bobby Wine is directly speaking the language that these people speak. Bobby Wine is also mobilizing what we call the illiterates, people in the informal sector. There's a code between him and those people that even makes him more dangerous because they'll get to vote. So he's mobilizing the voting population, the young people, the people in the informal sector. Those are people who vote. The people in the formal sector, they don't vote.
Honorable Anyorach, let me come to you. There is the question of just this last week, the Electoral Commission released the registration certificate for what everybody has reported as Mugisha Monto's party. Even when the man has tried as much as possible to run away from calling this his thing, he doesn't even have a formal structure that runs the Alliance for National Transformation, NT, that was registered the other day. How, in your view, is this extra hand on the opposition wing, the arrival of Bobby Wine, likely to impact the politics as we move forward? Because some of the issues people have discussed is it possible that now Bobby Wine and Kizza Besigye stretch the police in different directions, and the reaction, how sustainable that will be? Will this Alliance for National Transformation and the Bobby Wine and People Power, the FDC, which appears to be reorganizing itself, the Uganda People's Congress, the Democratic Party, all of them are trying to reorganize themselves. How will they impact the dynamic of the politics towards?
Yeah, they will actually even cause President Museveni to lose votes. But you know, Stalin of Russia said it's not the person who casts the vote that matters, the person who tallies.
Who counts?
Who counts.
Yeah.
That's the person who matters. So I think I'm not casting a shadow of doubt here, but I think if only these alliances would result into massive difference in poll numbers, that you rig and rig until you say, no, I think this is now unriggable. But definitely this alliance is good enough. You don't have to look further to see that the alliance is working, or any other new force like the arrival of Bobi Wine is good enough for the country. Just ask Mutesa II University in Masaka, the Gil president, his people power. Mbarara, you come to Nkumba,
Makerere,
Jambogo, Makere, and you wonder, because, I mean, Bobi has not made a reach out to these universities. So that's the power of the tool that the young people have. That is the social media. They're on Twitter, they're on Viber.
But they're fishing from the same pond. They're fishing from the same pond that Besigye was fishing from, or Uganda Young Democrats were fishing from.
And
so what difference does that make?
In the context of the media, the form of media they're using, the social media?
No. I'm saying the people winning these elections, previously it was UID that held sway in higher institutions.
No, you see.
And then there was the
never forget our demographics.
Yes.
Actually, almost 70% of Ugandans are young people. And these young people are not being stagnating at 14, 15, and so on. New young people are arriving at 18, 20, and they're becoming new voters. So, if Besigye was riding on the youth that by that time probably were, say, about 12 million or something, or 5 million who are registered voters, more young people are becoming politically conscious, because the social media provides a space as an alternative to what government did. You know, government muzzled young people out of political space in terms of their consciousness by doing away with civic education in primary. For me, I was in P5 and I knew how to define a bill. I even didn't know where it is done, where the process starts and so on. But young people now don't even understand what a bill is. At secondary school level, there's no political education. At university level, political degree in political education, political science, stopped with the likes of the Romushanas. Now you have a nation that is having a citizenry that is politically unconscious. They cannot decide, they cannot check their leaders, and it's going to get worse. By the way, when you look at our Vision 2040, deliberately support towards social subjects are being limited, the arts and so on, because it is the art people who are critical. It's the historians, it's the geographers, it's the lawyers. Now the limiting support under the disc is that we need to channel money to sciences. But actually they want people who are unconscious. And that's even when we are making all these changes, when government is making changes on the curriculum, O-level should stop at 2 p.m. Be very, very careful, because when you have a government in power that thinks politics, and by the things ahead, when you're even being, you remember, do you know how the Supreme Court was gagged into making this decision they came up with? Initially it was 6 to 1. All of us knew that. But then the president called the SEC and said, you come here at Chobe, let's make a decision. I am the candidate in 2021 and beyond. Then he also called the caucus, said the same thing. Now, the judges would be like, aren't we going to make a decision in vain? And you know, sometimes, I'm a lawyer, sometimes decisions are made in public interest. What would be, balance or convenience, really? What would be the social
the implication, yes.
So, this is the situation, this is the country we are living in.
Okay.
Now, you've seen.
Thank you. Let me take a couple of messages and then you'll come in. It appears that journalists are becoming more concerned with regurgitating official government statements without probing them. To me, that is a worry and a big worry. That's Musa Ismail Ladu.
Let me add something a little bit there. I'm sorry to interfere. I hate it when a news reporter is saying, now this has happened, but whether this will work or not, we'll wait to see. No, you're the one to connect the dot for us. That in our independent investigation, this is what we discovered. When you leave me a story, I switch on my TV. We wait to see what will happen. No, you're journalists.
As a journalist, I actually think that's a good way to end the story, because you
it
don't
is too open-ended.
You don't do the conclusion.
You know,
let you do the connect the dots by telling you, we have seen this, we have seen the other, and once I have given you the two sides of the possibilities,
You come up with your conclusion.
You come up with your
And then you are
conclusion.
in-depth investigation. You're not giving us the
Ongwen's
results.
Kisangala says, we are very disappointed with the way police is managed in Uganda. We, however, also know that the orders to torture or frustrate the activities of opposition leaders do not come from the structured police command chain, but rather from some terrorist systems of the junta factionary. Soon, we will roll out Action 2019. Police will play ball on the same side with Ugandans. This is going to happen. I don't know what Action 2019 is. And we're in the middle of 2019. So if soon it's going to be rolled out, that might be Action 2020. Yes, Joseph.
No, I was saying in regard to what you're saying about the reality is, you know, you've heard that about the education system, is that now we are going, secondary school students are going to be studying the NRM
critical
struggle,
thinkers
are going to be studying the NRM struggle to inculcate all Museveni's version of that, because there are so many versions which totally differ from his, but of course he has whitewashed it to make himself the hero and, you know, the end at end to everything. But that version is going to be now taught in secondary schools to forcefully continue a legacy that has been very painful for Ugandans, honestly. But going away from that,
what happened with patriotism?
that's it. That's their definition of it.
It's under the political. It's called the political history of Uganda from 1986. That's the new one. That
imagine now we're celebrating recently 50 years of independence. And that was a moment for every Ugandan to be proud, 50 years of independence. But then they say, how many years of independence? But only now start counting for 36, 1986 of stability. Now, and we are celebrating independence. You cannot write Museveni's story in independence as like he's the, okay, maybe he played a role and so on, which is overstated as everything concerning him. But you kill the Ugandanness, you kill the patriotism, you kill something which is supposed to be for everybody. 50 years of independence of this nation, and you try to put yellow on it, yet it's actually supposed to be 3 colors of the national flag. Anyhow, moving away from that, the issue that you are speaking about in regard to Bobi Wine, the reality is that when I see him, I just see Besige's methods with a new face. I'm yet to see something different that he is doing. And that's the reason they are clashing, because they are 2 people of a kind. Only one is younger, and therefore is, has more people behind it by virtue of his age, as he said, and perhaps is even more of a fad than the other one. The other one has been around, and perhaps we're tired of him and everything. And of course, that fatigue comes with it, just with everything. So now maybe he's almost ganged up in the same way as, you know, Museveni, in terms of people are tired of him, now want something fresh. So that's Bobi Wine's advantage. But in terms of what he's doing, it's the same thing, going out there, proving to police brutality, which of course there is, and stories of brutality which are going to continue all the way, and kind of taking the police maltreatment of him as some kind of badge of, and I had Besige saying, I had Besige saying that, you know, has that person been beaten by police? And I'm saying, okay, I know police beat innocent people, especially politicians, but is that going to be the badge? I mean, is that a rite of passage for an opposition politician? So do we I have been beaten? So maybe genuine political contestants should first go and be beaten by police, so that then they have been circumcised into, figuratively speaking, into political opposition.
Someone said before they came through the furnace, which was the Luero Bush struggle. So everybody has to earn their to earn their badge, their badge of honor.
But should we owe them simply because they went to the bush, or and because they've been beaten, they've been brutalized by police? Do we owe them as a country because of that?
No, that's what I'm saying. Should we owe them? We should, because they should tell us what they are going to do different. Because these people have been raised in this system, and everybody, this privileged thing of where some people.
Can I tell you the different things he's doing?
Okay.
Rule number 1. He's not having organized structures. All Ugandans have been clamoring for Bobi Wine to have structures. You can never be organized and fight Museveni. No way. That's why even himself, in election, he will bypass all his structures in the district, in the villages, and so on, and go straight. When he's sending money straight, and people will take the money, and not even people in the structures in the district or in the country. Now, therefore, having that, you know, haphazard kind of operation is very dangerous, very effective. Number 2, what is doing different is packaging his message in form of songs, which I think my brother was not doing. And you know, never underrate the power of songs. It is playing during wedding, playing during discourse, is playing during graduation. And you know, somebody also on internet is on YouTube, playing it and getting the message. The latest song he has released, did you watch it? Afande,
Yeah,
I'm not fighting you, I'm fighting for you. You watch that song, you shed tears. And you get that anger. So that song alone is making, actually it's doing sensitization, is making you politically conscious and aware. Let me tell you one thing. If ills are taking place and you don't speak about it, it becomes normal. It's like when something small is done and praised out of proportion, it becomes like a real thing. This is what government sometimes does.
You have up to next year, when this year ends, you have a right in Parliament to switch sides. What are we likely to see? I have heard the Alliance for National Transformation says it has a number of MPs who will announce a switch, majority of course from the Forum for Democratic Change, but also others will be indicating whether you're leaving the being independent to join some formalized group. So where will we see you?
At the right time, I'll make decision. But for now,
that's President Museveni speaks.
I'm independent.
In fairness, you can't put him on the spot.
For a gentleman who has just blamed journalists for not giving a conclusion, to give an answer like that, it's a huge contradiction.
We'll see what to be done.
Barbara, let me start with you, Joshua, to ask again. We started this discussion talking to the police, or about the police. If you had to speak to the police today, what would you tell the police under the leadership of Martin Okoth-Ochoala, especially in the way they have been enforcing whatever law they're enforcing, the rightness or wrongness of it notwithstanding?
Well, before you join police, you are as an ordinary citizen, as we are. You're a father to children, you are a brother to brothers, to sisters, you're a son of somebody. So I think the decent thing is don't muzzle your inner conviction in the name of money and power. The time comes when, God will judge you for the service you render. If I were one of the police officers, I think I would make the right decision and say, please put me on firing squad if I've done something wrong. So I think they should first remove that uniform and rethink why they're in police. If it is just money and survival, then you can do any naughty thing that you want to do. But if you're there for service, my uncle was IGP in this country, Lukufungi. He was highly professional. When Amin had issues with him, he just took off to Kenya. Then he came back. He still served as a very powerful police officer. So I think let's not sell our soul in the name of money, in the name of command, powers, and so on. Sometimes we need to sacrifice beyond what we see now, because God is in control.
Thank you.
Don't be fearful.
Barbara, what would you have Ugandan journalists, what kind of questions would you have Ugandan journalists ask or report in the current standoff? Because it's easy to get excited if you see some of the reporting, with all due fairness, by some very young journalists who haven't experienced before, getting carried away either for rooting for Bobby Wine or rooting for Kizza Besigye, or trying to be fair to, in the name of fairness to the police and other government institutions. What would you tell them?
Well, what I always tell young journalists is that start by asking the stupid questions. The stupid questions are the simple questions you ask. What's the role of the police? The law that governs the police, what do those laws say? Try to understand the law that governs operations of the police. Try to understand how a policeman is supposed to behave. Once you know the basics, what we call the stupid questions in journalism, once you know the basics, then you can ask them questions. You can ask them the clever questions that then the population expects you to ask. But if you don't know the laws that govern police, if you don't know how police is supposed to operate, how are you going to hold them accountable? So for you to be able to hold them accountable, you should start by knowing the basics. And that's where all young journalists should start.
So read that Police Act, and especially that Section 32. Section 32.2 was outlawed by the Constitutional Court, but then it was reincarnated in the Public Order Management Act. So you need to read the Public Order Management Act, you need to read the Police Act, in its entirety, the Penal Code Act.
Yes.
You need to read, especially Article 43 of the Constitution, and in full. It's interesting, we're talking about the different handling in upcountry media houses and Kampala-based media houses. The biggest shield is Kampala is the center of political activity. And the backlash is likely to be bigger if, for example, the police raided a Kampala-based radio station. You do not want the political fallout that comes from that sometimes. They have done it, but they've done it differently. Shut down CBS, raid KFM and close it the times they closed it, and other radio stations. It's a different approach. The dynamic here is significantly different because mobilization of people to mob, mobilization from other areas becomes higher. You can squeeze a journalist or a radio station in Mobende, and the rest of the city may not know. The rest of Mobende may not know or may be fearful to come and do anything. But if it were in Kampala, you'd be doing it here and someone else would be reporting it elsewhere, and especially in this era of social media. So operating in this space sometimes provides more protection than operating upcountry, which is to reinforce what the two of you talked about. Joseph, I'd like to end with you on this discussion. The police is at a critical junction here. There are those genuinely who want to be professional. I was speaking to Fred Enanga just before he started the show, and he's laboring to explain why they were not able to send representation here. Whether I agree with him or don't agree with him, he's trying to tell you why they were not able to make it. And he says, you guys contacted me a bit late and then to find colleagues who could come. I don't entirely agree with, because you're supposed to be emergency responders, even if you're called at the last minute. But what would you say? How would police handle itself in these circumstances?
No, these are,
if you are in the feet of Martin Okoth-Ochola, what would you do differently?
First of all, these are a lot of these people, as the Honorable here said, are very decent people working under very difficult circumstances. Now, you're saying that if you want to put me on firing squad, they will not put you on firing squad. They will just deprive you of a source of income. And that has been very difficult for people here in Uganda because anybody who hasn't any job to hold on to. So, like, there's a way this government has squeezed everybody into survival mode that you can never know what Afande Enanga is thinking, or even what his boss, the IGP, is thinking. I'm sure they are very decent policemen, but they are working under very difficult situations. And they are taking commands from people who are not necessarily, you know, they are superiors in terms of rank and police everything, but people who are getting orders from, you know, above and so everything. So we just need a total overhaul of this governance and everything to start afresh. We need a counter-revolution to end this NRM nightmare, because that's precisely what it has been. And when we have a situation which is functional, as it said, a true democracy where even a president can be summoned by a committee, you know, investigating his activities before the election, then we can know the true good and bad policemen. But right now, we have so many good tomatoes amidst so many rotten ones, and we can't separate the two. So the truth is, we'll sit here and talk about what police should do from an idealistic point of view, but there is no idealism here. We should talk about what an MP should do in idealism, but there is nothing. Their hands are also tied. So everybody's hands is tied by one bully at the top, and now the whole focus should be removing him, first of all, and then we can see who Charles Mangusha is, we can see who Joseph Kableta is after every, you know, this whole blanket under which we've been put has been
Thank
removed.
you very
That's
much.
the best thing we can do.
Thank you very much. Our time is out. A last message for Anyorach here. Says, now, if Honorable Anyorach is saying he would refuse orders by his bosses and ask for a firing squad, why does he accept to keep increasing their salaries and allowances in Parliament in a country that is struggling financially? Why doesn't he oppose it or resign? Do you have a quick answer for that to the gentleman here?
I think he has shot himself actually in the leg by saying in a country that is struggling financially. That struggle is even up to Parliament. It's even worse. And that increment that people are talking about, if it comes true, I've never confirmed it, that you will have a town running amount of 1 million per member of Parliament, by the way. But collectively on the budget, it reflects like this is 40%. But it is 1 million per member of Parliament running allowance, what I read in the media, because it did not come before us clear.
Okay,
Number two, it's a sitting allowance issue. that I mean, sorry, the travel allowance in
the constituency
inland, like when you go like for work and so on, that it will increase. It will go to 400,000. If you don't travel, you don't get that money. So I think we need to understand the pressure that MPs are under.
But Honorable, can't we go back to before 1996 when MPs were not paid?
We'll have that discussion another day. We'll have that discussion another day.
Can we go back to that time?
Will be next time. I think
we'll have that discussion on another day.
Nice to
I do not agree for 1 minute that members of parliament need to justify their monies by saying they are servicing constituencies. You're servicing constituencies because you fail to do just a moment
versus realism.
No, because you fail to do what you're supposed to do, to carefully oversee
when the
how national resources
when the system collapses.
That's why you end up building
the system collapses after 1996 when you started
we'll discuss that on another day.
There are places, unless when the president is going, that's when they work on roads. Are you not up to this?
We'll have opportunity to discuss that.
But it's not your role to work on roads.
Thank you very much,
yes,
Joseph Kabuleta, for making time for the show.
Not there.
It's because you have adulterated politics.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
We as members or the system.
Joshua Anyorach, you're a member of parliament, you're a politician. We'll have a whole discussion on that. By abdicating your responsibility, you end up where you are, and I agree, you spend the money. But it's because you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Impunity.
No, it's not even impunity.
It's patronage.
Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight and always. Thank you very much to the production crew that's here to deliver the show to you. And of course, the most important people, that you who give us feedback. Ivan Okuda, I received your message. Thank you very much. He makes time to watch the show even when he's busy with his studies all the time. So we appreciate so much. We'll join us again next Sunday for yet another exciting discussion right here on the Fourth Estate. Otherwise, debate continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, WhatsApp, and on Facebook. Good night.